So yeah, let's just dive right in. What we did here is we took these reviews and took the aspects and so forth from the review comments and the ratings and so forth, and we actually jumped and applied those to the customer journey map. If you don't know what a customer journey map is, it's basically the journey that a customer goes through when they establish a relationship with a business. And so it's their journey as a customer from the very start, where they think about, purchasing whatever it is that company offers or that brand offers. In this case, they think about going to a pub, all the way through their experience of finding the pub and deciding to go there and getting to the place and sitting down and looking at the menu and ordering some drinks or food or whatever they might order, talking about the ambiance, dealing with the customer service and so forth, all the way through to paying, even all the way past that to where they're talking about the pub. Are they now wanting to come back to it in the future? Are they now a brand advocate, a loyalist, so to speak, who wants to promote that brand or business or pub in this case to their friends? And so what we've got here is a little road, is the journey for the customer. And there's several different stages. There's 5 stages here. And inside of those stages are 11 different distinct steps that reflect the evolution of the customer experience. So here we're looking at the customer journey of a customer visiting a pub, and across the top you've got these 5 different stages. So you have the awareness, which is where they're identifying their needs and considering whether or not to go to a pub. The second stage is consideration, which is where they actually make that decision, and then they do everything they do all the way up until they actually order something, right? Because ultimately they haven't spent any money yet. So they're coming in and they're deciding to park their car or walk on over, get inside, sit down, look at the ambiance and decide, is the seating good? Is this where I want to sit down and do my hanging out for the next hour or so? And then the third stage is the conversion side. So this is the biggest stage here, which is where they're actually looking at the menu and they're checking out the food and the drinks and ordering something and engaging with the staff and experiencing the atmosphere. They're there for a while. And at the end, they're going to pay and head out. The next stage is the retention side, which is where the customer actually now reflects on the visit. Did I like it? Did I not like it? And then make a decision if they would go back or not, which is an important component. And then the final stage is the advocacy. So ultimately, you don't want just a customer to be happy. You want them to be happy, sure. But you also want them to be so happy that they're going to not only come back, but they're going to rave about you online and bring their friends and talk about you at work and all that kind of stuff. Hey, let's go there again tomorrow. And so that's a key component of the customer journey, is to turn them all the way from a brand new person considering your pub all the way into one of those brand loyalists or activists. So the next thing that we'll look at here on the next slide is going to be the actual customer journey in like a map concept. And we'll see these and we'll actually see the graph results, which is going to be really exciting.
Before we see that, Eric, can we guess, and since we have Jill here, who is our guest, our expert, can we guess the results? What were the best and the worst steps considering this journey? Jill, what do you think?
I think the reality might be conversion, but the results are probably likely to show that retention is where things are falling down.
Well, my basic personal experience is if there is no parking arrangement, I'm not going. But my guess would be that the worst results would be in retention.
I'm betting on engaging with the customers. Engaging with the staff. This is where, in my experience, things fall out, at least for me.
Especially after the pandemic, I agree with you. It has been a major issue. Yeah.
So this is where I see. This is where I expect to see the negative results, and the best results are perhaps in the ambience, because especially in pubs, people tend to put a lot of attention in the ambience. So I expect the highest results in ambience and the lowest in engaging with the staff.
Yeah, I was thinking parking too, Chris. I think that was one of that tends to be kind of a sore spot in some of these places. But I'm leaning towards what Emil says with engaging with the staff. Staff can make or break a pub experience for sure.
Let's see.
The moment of truth.
All right.
Haha.
So what we've got here, we've got the stages, and this is the customer journey map, and you can actually see the average of those reviews and the aspects graphed there on that line. And so the yellow is, Emil, correct me if I'm wrong, but the yellow is kind of a fair experience where it's not necessarily positive or negative, definitely a place that could be improved. But then,
well, fair is anything between 0 and 0.5 in terms of sentiment score. So it is certainly not excellent. And if it is not excellent, then it is fair.
and talk about, Emil, talk about that gray component, because that's a really interesting thing you don't see on a lot of customer journey maps.
What the gray component is the one standard deviation distribution. And so what we're seeing here is not only the average. Obviously, the average is self-evident. That is the line chart. But we also wanted to see what is the deviation. So yes, we know what is the average, but the average cancels the extremes. And we wanted to display the most prevalent, if you will, experiences. So the gray areas were more than. This is where the one standard deviation around the average is. So this is. I'll have to check, but this is certainly more than 60%. I don't have the exact percentage number in my mind here, but this is where the prevalent customer experience is. So in the upcoming industry studies, we would certainly want to show the outliers and to see the outliers. This is something that we don't have here. But this is what the gray area is. It is the one standard deviation around the mean.
Yeah, so with the averages here, you can see here the conversion is actually really high. And it looks like the average of the food and beverage consumption and engaging with the staff and the atmosphere, the average there was actually really high. So it's in the green. But because that gray area is really, really large, there's a wild amount of variation. So some places are doing a really just not a great job with that at all. And other places are very, very well.
Correct.
So
as you can see that the variance is asymmetric towards the negative experiences.
Yeah. So there's some wide, there's a lot of inconsistency there from like the staff standpoint and food and beverage consumption. I assume that would be like the food and the product quality. So
and that is also a sign of staff rotation. It's difficult to keep consistency in service when you have a lot of people coming in and out all the time.
Well, here in this industry study, we actually don't have this result broken down by the elements of the marketing mix, and this is something that we certainly should start doing starting from the next industry study, because it will be very interesting to see when we have these deviations, what is the driver? Here we see the average plotted across the steps in the customer journey, but it certainly will be very interesting to break down each step into the elements of the marketing mix and even further into the features of the marketing mix. So this is certainly something that we will look into in the next industry studies with certainty.
Yeah, but even so, the advocacy level is still quite positive. And one of the things that I found interesting when we saw the locations is that many of the pubs that had a very high rating are local pubs that are places that people go on a regular basis. So that's why we can see here the advocacy rate is very high.
Yeah, but also the retention is actually very low. Those are the highest and the lowest components.
Yeah.
So the people that it sounds like there's quite a number of people who post about a bad experience online and decide not to come back. But then you also have simultaneously some people who rave about it who want to bring their friends and advocate. So that's a really interesting dynamic. It looks like pubs are kind of a love or hate thing, and there's probably, it looks like a lot of that's going to be driven from the conversion, the fact that there's that huge gray area in the middle of the conversion. So the food and beverage consumption, engaging with the staff and the atmosphere.
Based on my experience, it's also a lot of related with the location, where it's located.
Well, certainly, but again, if you look at the gray area, this is the one standard deviation, and I just checked.
Yes.
One standard deviation is 68%. So 68% consistently stays into the critical area. It doesn't even go into the fair area. So this is definitely an issue, and it is consistent and prevalent.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking at that, you almost half the time your quality of the food and beverage or quality of engaging with the staff or the atmosphere is relatively low. So there's a lot of people complaining about those areas actually, or at least not impressed with it, not excited about it, didn't have a great time.
Yeah, this is typically the kind of place that have a clientele until another establishment opens next door.
Yeah.
There is an alternative.
What kind of customer experience programs would you recommend? When you see a wide variance there, a large inconsistency in the quality of the service or the food and the beverage and such.
Yeah,
Is there a way, if you were a business and I saw this, let's say I own a pub and I say, okay, my average is pretty good, but I've definitely got some wild inconsistencies. How would you help a pub owner to tighten that up, make it great all the time?
Well, I see that as one of the main values of mystery shopping as a methodology, because certainly where people are involved, the more staff that you have, you're only as good as your weakest link almost. And I think it's really important for all the staff, for the whole frontline team, to actually understand why they need to be delivering the service basics in terms of the behaviors, the smiles, the eye contacts, the hellos, the goodbyes. Because I think probably the closer you get to the cities and the urban areas, the more transactional the experience is likely to be.
Yeah.
And I think really the point Chris made earlier in terms of the communities and the pubs, in the sort of more community-driven areas, maybe the country areas in the UK, they know their customers better. It's not time precious. They can spend time chewing the fat, having discussions about their day, and getting to know their clientele. Whereas, in the cities, particularly London, I would say, the service becomes very transactional, and that certainly is not what customers want in the main, in terms of spending their hard-earned cash, in the pub environment.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, like I said earlier, if you want a drink, you can have a drink at home, or you can go to a friend's house or something like that. But when you're in an establishment like a pub, like you want to. So, Emil, you got to see these results before I did here, before all of us here on the podcast. So, can you give us maybe some of the key takeaways that you saw from this customer journey?
Okay, so it is not just the customer journey, but also the marketing mix analysis. And keep in mind that this is only data extracted from online reviews. We haven't gotten into any of the other measurement tools yet. So just based on this analysis, what we can state as key takeaways is, first and foremost, the importance of the marketing mix aligning marketing mix with the customer behavior and preference is obviously crucial for success. And that is the moment of truth where the business processes meet the customer experience. Second is focus on product, place, and people. That became very obvious in the results concerning the marketing mix. These are the most talked about aspects by customers and should be prioritized as key focus marketing mix elements. and especially ambience, food quality, and engagement with the stuff. Then quality, ambience, and service. These are the most prevalent elements of the most prevalent features of product, place, and people. These are particularly important in the customer perception related to the customer satisfaction. Addressing negative feedback, as we saw, approximately 20% of the discussions about the key topics were negative in the critical area. They were not just negative, they were negative in the critical area, indicated the need for improvement. And finally, the high volume of negative feedback represents a significant opportunity for pubs to improve their offerings, as a minimum, respond to the critical reviews, and therefore increase the overall customer satisfaction and loyalty. Overall, the opportunities for improvement are great, as we can see, both on the marketing mix side and the customer journey side. Another very important tool in the realm of voice of the customer, in addition to the customer feedback through online reviews, are the voice of the customers surveys. And we also see that the significant challenge for businesses is to effectively capture valuable feedback within the constrained attention span afforded by customers, which means that if a customer agrees to provide feedback through an online voice of the customer survey, then this survey needs to be structured in a way that it can capture the most value from that feedback in a very limited amount of time. Therefore, crafting the optimal voice of the customer survey is essential, as it would directly influence the quality and reliability of customer insights, which are pivotal for informed decision making and obviously strategic planning. So here we will try to answer the question, what is the optimal starter voice of the customer survey and how to create it? And in this case, the first decision is to decide on the structure of this starter or optimal voice of the customer survey. So as I mentioned earlier, a significant challenge for the businesses is to effectively capture valuable feedback. And therefore, the structure of the survey is very important to maximize the value gained within the limited attention span. In this particular case, we propose the following structure: a primary question, followed by key driver questions. In this case, we suggest 5 key driver questions, each measured on a scale from 1 through 5, from the most to the least, from an experience standpoint. And each key driver question is then followed by a key driver detail question, which details the negative experience or the suboptimal experience, if any. And we'll see a sample example in a second. And this all is then close to the closing question. So from this standpoint, it is important to make a decision first on the primary question, then on the key driver questions, the details, and the closing question. Considering what we already know from the online reviews and ratings, and the fact that we know what customers talk about the most, we can easily infer the key driver questions or the top 5 key driver questions. And before getting there, the primary question can be a CSAT question: how satisfied are you with the brand? And this is what we suggest here. It may be a Net Promoter Score question. It may be another metric like the customer effort score. Since the CSAT, the customer satisfaction question, is well understood in this survey, we're starting with it. So the first question is: how satisfied are you with the brand? Then this question is followed up by 5 key driver questions. First one is interactions and engagements with staff, then overall ambience and atmosphere of the establishment. The third key driver question is seating arrangements and comfort upon arrival. Then process of exploring the menu and placing the order. And ultimately, we get to the 5th key driver question, which is the quality and taste of food and beverages consumed. The way we selected these questions was based on the frequency of these topics being talked about in the online reviews and ratings. And these 5 key drivers are really very often talked about. Then for each of these key driver questions, we, based on what customers talk about, we selected the top 5 details. For example, for the first question, interactions and engagements with staff, key details are friendliness and approachability, knowledgeability about menu and offerings, responsiveness to requests, professionalism and demeanor, and speed of service. And these are the top 5 details that key driver detailed questions that that customers talk about. And obviously we have the other, which is intended to capture all the other questions. I'm not going to get into detail of all these. These are visible here on the slide and will be available in the industry study publication in the Synergistic CX magazine next week. But let me just move on to the closing question. In this case, we recommend to close with a Net Promoter Score and a Net Promoter question. On a scale of 0 to 10, how likely are you to recommend the brand to a friend and colleague? And the reason we think this is logical, and we think it is logical to start with the CSAT and to end with the NPS, because you can ask the NPS selectively based on the previous questions. And if the overall experience is positive and the NPS score is positive, then we can follow up this survey with an action item such as leave a review or do something else. There are many opportunities for a follow-up activity. So here, what we're going to do is we have prepared a short demonstration, a starter voice of a customer survey in action. So let's just quickly jump to it to see how it would look like. There we go. So here we can see how the key topic is, how we drill into the details if the key topic question is answered with anything other than 5. So answers 1, 2, 3, and 4 on the key driver question is going to trigger a drill down into the key driver detail questions. And here we can also see the availability and the option of choosing the other as an answer option and providing additional detail and context, something that was not provided, that was not readily available in the detail. And here we conclude with an NPS question. So very briefly, this is this demo, and to summarize the importance of the voice of the customer survey as a tool.
And I think it's really interesting, Emil, that this comes from questions come from the reviews, because many times the organizations have a really hard time selecting the questions, and they end up with questionnaires that are really long for customers to respond, and that creates a lot of survey fatigue. And here is a huge opportunity to really focus on what's important for that particular industry.
Exactly, that was the objective here, and we know how difficult it is to craft a short voice of a customer survey which will deliver actionable results, and that is why we chose to use the feedback and to analyze what customers really talk about. And again, don't forget, this is based on more than 300,000 online reviews.
Many times the companies, they spend a lot on qualitative research, such as focus group, for example, just to craft a questionnaire, and this is a very effective way to get much better results.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's short and sweet. It's great.
Short and sweet. Short,
Yes.
sweet, and efficient. This guarantees
And faster.
the faster responses and better retention, and also lower fallout.
Well, it goes after the real important parts early on too. Like if someone doesn't actually finish a survey, because a lot of people are just impatient, don't want to spend 2 minutes filling something out. Even if they only get halfway through it, you've hit the really important areas right up front. You've gotten some information.
Exactly.
No,
Exactly.
and if we're talking about an international brand that wants to launch a survey and they have locations worldwide, it's really difficult to agree on questions that would be relevant to different locations. And just looking at reviews automatically, as we did, it's a really interesting way to develop a methodology for a voice of customer.
Yeah, it gives some meat and substance behind why the voice of the customer survey is what it is. It's like, well, this is based off the global industry.
Yes.
And there are numbers that prove it.